melting.
So that is seriously going to limit your business potential.
Yeah. So,
Hmm.
みんな飛べちゃう。
And
そこ置いとく。
in case JICA is involved, what is their stance usually? Are they following in the same way to make sure that is JICA facilitating the drafting of very komakai contracts, or
yeah, if it's a funding scheme like ODA, then ODA, the positions to stand in the middle, then actually that is something to force the counterpart to follow some condition given by JICA, which is of course favorable for Japanese companies.
Right. Yeah, that I've seen.
So the counterpart side, if it's the good condition to get some fund from Japanese, while the contract condition is given not favorable for them, but they may decide to get opportunity to fill in their gap, which is necessary to build up some infrastructure. But yeah, they have other options.
Right.
So option is not only Japanese. Then now they're getting more options. So yeah, they can utilize sometimes as they want. So even though Japanese side wants to extend some project from first step to second step, but then they are supposed to make agreement in this first step, but actually the counter side doesn't intend in their mind. They don't decide to go with this scheme only supported by Japanese. So our fund, ODA fund, sometimes not welcome.
So even though there is money, the conditions are too asymmetrically beneficial for the Japanese side that even that extra incentive to have JICA money finance part of the deal is not enough to get an agreement.
No.
Right. So actually, the projects that I've been involved in, I believe that it was almost 100% was financed by JICA. Well, that's easy doing business, but then again, actually, the contractors were always, without exception, Japanese companies.
Or some Japanese are saying we're doing the good business, they're breathing locally, but it might be some business in somewhere which doesn't require the Japanese company to do their mindset more like points. Yeah, of course there must be some sectors where they don't have to change their business way, like ramen shop and
right.
Yeah, so that's the exception.
Is there any difference between the customer? So in the case that Japan is the supplier and overseas is the customer, do you see any difference between government contracts and private sector contracts?
Yeah, basically it's different. The contract with the government and contract with private company. Yeah, both cases, the public and private have something different. We have to do something different as we do in Japan to getting more chance to make it more promising. Not only to show the service and specification are attractive. That is not necessary. It's easy for this side, the counter side, to show some comparison. It's easy to show they have some options. Then they can say it's not necessary, meaning the specification is too much. So you can reduce your specification to some extent with some price. Also following that specification.
できないでしょ。
できない。
No, this is actually when I came to Japan and I saw like the enormous service, and I thought, oh, there must be such a big market to actually supply Japanese customers with a little less service at a lower price point. But then I realized that the price point was actually super low. So basically, service is really free. Which is kind of surprising, because how can it be free? Because people are, you need to hire people to actually provide service, but it's not really it's not really put in the price, it seems. So, in short, basically, if the Japanese are going to, in your observation, if the Japanese people or companies are going to negotiate with a foreign counterpart, then the only counterpart who's being considered is the one who has a very accommodative negotiation strategy. So just going to say yes to every requirement that's being put out by the Japanese company. If they start to become if the counterpart starts to become more of a competitive negotiator, they consider the risk too high and they will break off the negotiation.
Right. So they like the way so that they can, so they like to see some compromise too much from counterpart side.
Right.
So they can feel they finally understand the value of Japanese. Yeah.
So basically, the typical so then the question actually is, are we not capable of negotiating, or are we just not capable of dealing with a competitive negotiator? Because if we actually make all kinds of conditions and become very komakai about the contractual agreement, that actually is a sign that we are capable of negotiating, only we are not capable of dealing with objections.
Yeah, so the scope that Japanese can negotiate with anyone is so limited.
Oh.
So Japanese can do some active and meaningful negotiation in limited area that they can feel comfortable.
Oh.
So once some condition will go out of that area, they cannot do any negotiation, I think.
So that's a little bit different than what I thought it was. Actually, it's not like they're not negotiating. That it's not like they're not critical in hedging their risks. They're actually very critical in hedging their risks before entering into a deal with a foreign company or a foreign government.
So their standard is always in Japanese side. So after they tap in some project, then what they will do is always Japanese way. For example, like the project named Smart City and Newton project is the booming in these countries, but Japanese way is always following the Japanese way in Japan, like to get the land, to build the apartment, and to get the money by selling how many rooms, then to operate this apartment they need to put in some lifeline infrastructure like electricity and water treatment and some garbage, the waste treatment.
Right.
Then also they think they want to become this project to look like smart city, but in order to do, for example, the smart city, for example, getting some concept of IoT and AI or some other technologies, the approach should be the other way around. To think of, to create concept of how this city is like to enough to be called smart city.
Right.
Then have to design as it is smart city, then attach some functions and services what is necessary to make it smart city. Then as Sonoda-san mentioned in this morning, in saying something about smart city, some data, the transaction have to be shared to utilize for another service, the value-added service. So the data have to be aligned, arranged to be exchanged from the one side to the another. So we have to set up common language to exchange these transactions or data. But following the same way as we do it in Japan, just the lifeline infrastructure to be built. This is the first thing they will do, and followed by the other projects. So this is not how the smart city is going to be built.
Not in not outside of Japan.
No.
So can we do business then?
They're doing, but I don't think it's going to be successful. So actually, some company who is doing that project, their background is the real estate property development.
So they start with what they're most comfortable with, land and developing apartments.
Right. So they just change the name of the department and division, then doing the same thing.
Right.
So yeah, it's not how it's gonna go.
Right. It's just marketing. なるほど。海さん、would you mind closing the air conditioner? ちょっと寒いです。
A little bit cold.
Mm.
I was so sleepy, so I just
Sleepy. Oh my god.
sorry.
Uno-san is sleepy.
So
Yeah.
I just try to cool in my head.
Right. Oh.
So could you summarize for me? I just a little bit napped.
So actually, what we were discussing, that okay, Japanese companies do not negotiate, and the way that Japanese companies work together is without a contract, start working and then make a very thin contract that has very little specifications, and that is actually a risk when doing business outside of Japan. So without negotiation, we do not have we run a risk. It was what you were saying, but actually, speaking with Takahashi-san, his experience, which counts for more than the theory, his experience tells us that in reality, Japanese companies are very komakai, very precise and to the letter when it comes to doing business with companies outside of Japan. Mm-hmm. So they make very detailed contracts, and if the foreign counterpart does not agree to all the terms that the Japanese side lay out, then they do not do business. So actually, what we concluded is that it's not a matter of we do not negotiate, but the truth is it's closer to that. Okay, Japanese do not negotiate with foreign counterparts who are more competitive. So only if the counterpart is accommodative, if it has an accommodative negotiation style, just says yes and yes and yes and yes to every requirement, everything that's put into the detailed contract of the Japanese side, they are willing to take the risk and do business overseas. If not, they rather run away. So it's not, the problem is not negotiation. The problem is actually how strong how much prepared the Japanese side is willing to take risk.